I think we all agree that AI is here to stay. And if you and your organization is not leveraging AI, you might be falling behind. So, Yash, I love to, you know, get the audience to know you, your background, your PhD, your early days with W2O, real chemistry. If you could just give us a quick intro of yourself, that'd be great. Thank
Sure. Yeah. So my background is kind of atypical for a lot of folks in the marketing, comms, and kind of AI space. My PhD was in biophysics and computational neuroscience, where I was really working on a lot of interesting brain-derived neural networks, and really understanding how neural networks could be applied to understanding behavior. And so when I finished my PhD, I really started applying some of that to, still staying in the healthcare space, still staying in the science space, applying it to clinical trials, to, pharmacodynamic modeling. And I had a startup in Houston that was really focused on providing services to pharma companies, to, folks doing clinical research, and really helping them to use AI tools and modeling tools in a new way. But then I decided to kind of leave that world in 2013 and joined what was at the time W2O Group, now Real Chemistry, um, as a data scientist. And it was an interesting switch for me because I had never worked in marketing or comms or anything related to that before, but I was lured by the idea of applying AI tools and technology to problems like that, to where we could accelerate the work being done, improve efficiencies, really transform an organization through these tools. And so during my time there, my job transformed from, here are some basic kind of typical data science tasks into, what are some tools that we could be building, not for clients, but really internally, processes that could change based on tools that we were building, hand in hand with analysts to accelerate their work. And so by the time that I left, we had a suite of tools that we had developed that analysts were using, more than 11,000 times a month. And it was leading to tremendous time savings and just acceleration of the kind of work they could do. Um, this was really kind of my motivation for starting Ringer, is really to help organizations transform the way they think about using AI, other automation, really from the ground up, not just slapping these tools into place, but really rethinking their organization, rethinking what they're doing based on having these tools available.
So, Rare Sciences, your company, you're the CEO and the founder of the company. You have offices New York, Texas, Austin, Texas, and all around the country, and you are serving clients all over the world. Could you just walk us through this data, AI, as well as the integration with the workforce, meaning working with human clients, and how does it work in
Yeah, it's
reality?
very interesting. Yeah, it's not a technology problem. This is really a change management problem. And so as we've been really talking to a lot of different companies around the world, it's a common thread. We started the company, really based on data and really understanding data really well, whether it's social media data, whether it's prescription data, whether it's consumer research data, whatever it is, really understanding that data and then doing something with it. But now this is a different conversation with, C-suite and kind of other leaders. It's not just about the data, but it's like, what are you really trying to accomplish with that data? And this is kind of what I would, really love to have, a broader conversation on, is, thinking through, like, what is the organization trying to deliver on? Is it increasing sales of a particular product? Is it trying to put out better content on their website that's going to lead to change for patients that are coming there? Is it like, what is the end goal? And then working backwards to the data. What data would inform better content? What data would inform better sales? What data would inform, some particular action being taken? And then what are the tools, AI tools or otherwise, that could actually accelerate parts of the process in between the data and that final deliverable? It can be a mix of people and tools. Maybe it's just tools, but it's starting to really rethink everything from the viewpoint of that end deliverable. And this is, I think, where a lot of organizations that we've been talking to have seen a lot of value in terms of I actually care about that end deliverable. I care about the KPIs associated with that end deliverable. How we get there is actually less important. And we want to make that process as efficient as possible, as time efficient as possible, as money efficient as possible.
So I think one of the things you talk about is actionable insights, and the deliverables are not just looking good on paper, but also has the real impact. Would you like to give a example named or you know anonymous a client, like give the audience a little bit of flavor how it actually looks like or works, how it actually
Right.
works?
Yeah, we have a lot of great examples over just the last couple of years, where we've taken what used to be just static reports, things that, we would mine some data set for some great research insights, presented back to clients, and then sometimes it would go nowhere. Where we really started transforming our thinking over the last couple of years is like that data, that research has to lead to some kind of action and some action with some measurable return. So one thing that we've been doing a lot of over the last couple of years is actually helping with executive visibility on LinkedIn, and we've been working with numerous clients over the years on really how can we move them forward. So this starts with the data. How can you help executives be better on LinkedIn? This isn't just kind of following a recipe book. This isn't just hey post more on LinkedIn, but what should you really be doing better? And so it starts with research, researching yourself, researching your competitors, researching aspirational people, and really understanding what that data looks like. But that's the first part of it. And then the second part of it is like, okay, now I have all of these insights. What do I do from that? And that's actually, where a lot of people weren't able to take it forward. Before, a lot of these AI tools, they got these reports, they got these research insights, and they're like, well, I don't know how to act on this. I don't know what I do with this now. Now with these AI tools, what we've transformed this into is a pipeline that goes straight from these research insights to now using those insights to inform an AI model that will now help you create content that will now perform better, speak to your audience better, be more timely about what you need to post on, not replacing the human and not replacing human teams that might support executives as they're posting, but to give them thought starters, to give them ideas about how they should be positioning something, how they can lean into particular topical pillars, how they can use language that's going to perform better or be more like these the CEOs that perform have really high followership and really engaging content, and creating AI models that are leveraging all that data but still keeping a human in the loop. That feedback, where they can tweak the language, they can really massage it, and then help the CEO or C-suite executive kind of post that content. So now this is taking that research all the way from just research to something more actionable that is AI driven.
Okay, so I want to touch upon three things. um, I want to circle back and just make sure our audience here or heard what you just said about the executive visibility and this influence builder or being the influencer and the thought leader on LinkedIn. So this is one of the service areas that you're offering to basically people at different levels as executives or thought leaders on LinkedIn. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, and it's really geared towards increasing not just followership but really engagement from the right kinds of audiences. So not just random audiences, not just bots, but really the kinds of people that you want to reach for your business, and making sure that it's giving you a voice. You're developing some kind of influence in a particular area that's passionate to you. That you're something you're interested in. You're being passionate about this area, but it's also going to have direct impact on your business and things that you can measure in terms of your business impact.
Great. So they can all reach out to you and your team on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Yes.
The second part I really want to kind of delve into is content. Given how generative AI really propelled this understanding of natural language um, on mostly on the internet, I would say, or any other interactive, device or anything. So, how do you see this natural language web or the model context protocol? How the advancement of AI is actually going to transform what we've seen as just business as normal on the internet to a whole new era of content-driven engagement.
Yeah, it's really interesting that now, and I've had this conversation now with a couple of different executives over the last couple of months. All of them are really concerned about, how is their company going to show up in these AI models? How is, if ChatGPT or these other platforms are going to become that first stop for people when they're doing research, when they're asking about a company, when they're asking about a paper they need to write, or they're asking about a brief that they need to write for a particular client, that's going to be their first stop. And so the way that these AI models consume content, the way they scrape the web, the way that they read content is going to become the way we read content. And so how do we now meet these AI models where they are? And it's a couple of things that you just listed off. NLWeb is a very interesting kind of protocol that was just released by Microsoft, and this gives you a way of thinking about the structure for your web pages, the kind of tags that go into your web pages that might impact how it can be structured and consumed by AI models. There's MCP and other kind of protocols for how agents will be talking to each other. We have to be able to create content that isn't just directly for human consumption, but is understanding that there's going to be these intermediates of AI agents, and organizations have to be building their content to speak to those audiences as well, those digital audiences of AI agents, so that consumers, the humans, can actually consume the content the way that we actually intend.
Do you have tangible steps that you can show the audience, like if a company, a brand, a nonprofit, a school wants to take the next steps, how does that look like?
Yeah, so the way that we've done this now for a lot of different clients is really trying to build at first an understanding of how does your company currently look like in these AI models, really trying to mine a family of models for understanding how do they reference your company, how do they reference some of your offerings, but then to really go through all of your digital assets, websites, own content, things like that. And we've started building out a playbook for doing these audits, these data audits across your company, across your competitors, and really starting to pull a lot of that into a framework that we can now start to analyze using AI models. So we can now start to see, if I present the data this way, will an AI model generate content that looks like something from my web pages, or will it generate something different? And so this becomes a playbook that any company of any size really can leverage to really build on their own content, build on their competitors' content, and start creating things that are built for consumption on different own channels, consumption by other AI agents, built for consumption for any scrapers that are out there. It's basically transforming your data, your understanding, your competitors' data into a fuel for that next generation of content that you want to produce.
So how does a data audit or digital, AI era assessment would look like? How long does it take, and how much does it cost?
It's a great question. This used to be a process when we first started this with a lot of the AI models. This took weeks and weeks and weeks to do. The first time that we really did this fully end to end with a lot of the AI tools in place was 2 weeks. And so this is a very, very short process. It doesn't actually take months and months like you might expect. Less than 2 weeks. Even the initial audit is something that you would be surprised. It's not something that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, yes, but not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it gives you a fantastic starting point. And not necessarily that you have to go fully into the AI solution, but it gives you a good starting place that of data and research and assets that you can feed into AI models to then start prompting them for the right kind of content, the right kind of content changes for these models. Part of what we're going to be baking into a lot of our products going forward is the ability to already understand how this data needs to be restructured for, as you kind of said, like NL Web, MCP, for any of these other protocols. Having that is just one of the natural outputs. Before, and I think a lot of people over the last year have gotten really proficient at formatting things for, okay, I can make a prompt to post something on Twitter or post something on LinkedIn or post something on Instagram. I can create prompts that can do that. This is really no different, but you have to be thinking in that way, where this is just another channel, another avenue that you have to make sure to populate and not just be caught unaware and only be focusing on the traditional digital channels.
Okay, so before I get to more of a agentic future, how you and your company, could provide not just the initial audit or the research or action items, but also enable the more of autonomous like workflow to sustain the so-called AI native future. Before I even go there, um, I kind of want to, um, if it's okay with you, delve into once you give the audit, what normally, generally, a brand or organization would do, between their website, other digital assets on social. How does that to-do list would look like?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Like when we've started developing these audits, and we kind of started with like, let's just grab everything we can, but we really started to develop a clear checklist of, you know, steps that we can kind of go through where, it really is, building off of listing off your digital assets, your websites, your own channels that you currently have, any strategic documents that you have about the content generation, things that you normally would kind of keep internally, keep within a particular content team, brand guidelines, strategic objectives for the next year, things, new initiatives that might be coming out, brand objectives, any of that. Um, but then also listing off, so who are our competitors? What do our competitors have out there that we see as aspirational or that we would like to mimic? Um, and this is really like a very clear kind of checklist. This isn't a just dump all your data to me, but it's really thinking very specifically about the kinds of current content that you have, as well as the current strategic documents that you have. One of the things that we kind of pride ourselves on is that we're, especially if this is very sensitive documents for, like, for example, a pre-launch drug company, which is something that we've actually done this for. These aren't the kinds of documents that you would just throw to ChatGPT, and these are not the kinds of things that you would want floating out in any of these open models. And so if it's that kind of situation, then part of our checklist is identifying, okay, these are sensitive documents that we actually don't want going anywhere. Okay, now what is our next part of this going to look like? Are we going to recommend that you just, use a ChatGPT implementation, a custom model there, and start, training it on all of your data, your competitors' data, and then move forward? Or are we going to recommend something like a custom build, a custom AI build where you can dump all these documents and assets into one place and internally have a tool that you can start prompting for new content? Um, we've steered companies in both directions depending on the level of sensitivity of their data, the level of privacy of their data. We're working with an engineering firm right now where they actually have a lot of um, very proprietary assets that they do not want going out there. And so one of the things that we've been building for them is a fully kind of custom solution that walls off their data, looks at their content, their data, all of their strategic documents, all of their sensitive blueprints and things like that, everything all in one place so that they can use that to kind of leap from.
So that's interesting, right? They're engineering firm, but they're working with you to implement the custom language model. Why is that?
Yeah, it's interesting because the use cases for these kinds of custom language models is not just content. It is really not, at the end of the day, AI models are a knowledge management kind of center, and it really that's the CEO of this particular engineering firm, I think, saw that right away and very kind of astutely that this could become that junior engineer, that um, that person that really has a lot of this kind of domain knowledge very specific to this company and then can do something with it. So this isn't just for creating LinkedIn post or creating a Twitter post or creating a website copy, but this can become a transformative engine for the company if all of this data is structured in the right way. I'm pulling in competitor information from other engineering firms. I'm pulling in my own engineering documentation, manuals, blueprints, things like that. Like all of this knowledge becomes this engine for doing work faster, having this knowledge distributed across the organization through this tool rather than sitting in people's heads. And really that is where I see a lot of the beauty of these AI models, and especially when they're deployed company wide, is to become this thought partner. And so when we started talking with this engineering company, it was really to help them develop this thought partner that would be just like somebody in their company, but very secure, very carefully kind of developed so that it understood their data without going outside of their walls, but really was tied into the way they think about their problems, the way they want to work with their clients.
By the way, I'm going to have Dmitry Chervik for the second episode. He has been enterprise AI, building rack, and probably there is a little bit more heavy duty on these, AI models following Yash's talk today. So let's talk about this agentic workflow part of it. My understanding is that your team is not just doing the audit research or recommendations on action items. You are actually handing over this pre-built or custom built solution so that they can continuously monitor the dashboard, creating content, and then looking at the impact with this AI-enabled solution. And it's not just a human AI, but also agent to agent, within that workflow, that things can get more efficient. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Over the last year, especially, we really started leaning into, you know, true kind of agentic flows, not just the way that I think people have traditionally been talking about it over the last, 6, 7 months, where you're kind of letting ChatGPT talk to ChatGPT and some of these kind of, custom prompts, but it's really truly building out independent agents that have their own sets of tools, their own set of instructions, and they're talking to each other to perform different tasks and chaining them together in a very specific way so that they can create this final output that you want. And so a great example is something that we demoed at South by Southwest with one of our partners, HealthQuant, which was really around a very specific kind of deliverable for pharma, a key opinion leader and influencer analytics. And really saying, like, there are so many different components to that analysis, really so many different components to how that work is delivered. Could we dramatically transform this? And it came from an ask with when we were discussing this with HealthQuant of like, could you just develop something that was a dashboard, and could I plug my data into this dashboard and I could measure how different influencers are performing or how they're doing and who's going up and down in the rankings. But we really rethought this process and we said, what if that wasn't the end goal? What if the end goal was really to make this more conversational, where anybody could mine this information anytime they wanted? There was a whole family of agents out there constantly bringing the data in, curating the data for you, providing some of these deep analytics on demand for anybody. Where we could feed in a lot of this sensitive information, where we could bring in a lot of these different data pieces that typically would have taken months and months and months for a human to bring together, but doing it all securely. And so my team of talented analysts and data scientists, they really put this together in a matter of weeks, not months, a fully new product that end to end had all of these kind of agents talking to each other, presenting this data in a nice conversational format, looked very much like ChatGPT. But underneath was this tremendous volume of data, and this every time that we showed this to pharma executives or pharma folks, they were like, immediately get it. This is exactly what we need. This isn't another dashboard. This isn't just another platform that's going to give me a list of people or give me things that I can't act on. This is going to give me something I can immediately act on. And I'll give you one specific example of why. Traditionally, when you've seen these dashboards or something, you get these ranked lists of, hey, okay, I want to talk to you should talk to this doctor because they're the top of your list. But then they kind of leave it at that. They don't really give you any way to talk to that doctor. So really what this tool then gave you the ability to do is, well, we're sitting on all this data about this doctor. We know exactly what makes them tick, why we selected them as the top doctor you should talk to. Let me help you craft the right outreach message for this doctor. Here it is, and that we think will have a high probability of engaging with that doctor. I think when people saw that, they're like, great, that's exactly what I need to make this data actionable. That was the last step I needed, is to now leverage everything I was sitting on to activate. And this is kind of the philosophy that I think we've been taking with all of our kind of agentic flows, is really like keeping our eye on that. What do we need to activate on all this data that the agents are creating, that they're building, they're creating this strategy on? What do I need them to create at the end to really deliver value? And then the last part of it is measurement. Can I use agents to now measure the efficacy of what I just did? And so that can be always tracked, always measured, always used to re-optimize the entire system on an ongoing basis. So that, again, you're not having different teams do this. You're not having some measurement platform over here. You're not having some, AI platform over here. You're having everything kind of fully orchestrated within the same system.
So let's plan another episode, another talk, just so that one of your team members may be able to demonstrate on this series. I think it'd be really cool to see it in action, even though is leaning into farmer, but I think so-called key opinion leaders, that social influence really applies to
Everything.
friends.
Yeah. 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 The same flows, the same agents, I think, can apply to a lot of things. So yeah, happy to volunteer one of one of the members of my team to do that.
That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. So let's zoom out a little bit.
Mhm.
I know you've done a lot, and the reason that I really wanted you to open the series is that this is actually real. This is not hype. This is not using some famous person to mimic a digital twin and it just make people just wow, right? The toy age is the wonder toy age is over. Now let's get real. So I call it the AI native future because I do believe businesses, organizations, nonprofit, however we work, would really require leaders, decision makers, to re-engineer how we all work together, keeping in mind there are certain things that AI, quantum computing could just help us with efficiency. For Father's Day, and I know you're a father too, I really envision that lots of, executives, very busy people as parents, they could actually spare more time and spending that time with their family because they now have the so-called hybrid AI human workforce. Um, so can you talk a little bit about your own company and how you are kind of leading your own business and taking this into the AI native future?
Yeah, so we aren't just kind of recommending this for other folks. We really took a good look at ourselves and how we wanted to transform the way that we do business internally, to be truly AI native. And so I'll give you an analogy of kind of what that means to us. Where if you think about renovating a house, for example, there's two kind of ways you can go about this. You could slap some new paint on, change the countertops, put some nice granite countertops on, make these nice additions to make you feel better, about your house. You haven't really transformed things that much, but maybe it's a new look. Maybe it looks, a little shinier. You haven't really made fundamental changes. The other way to do it is to start knocking down walls, to start really tearing things out, maybe going down to the studs and really starting from scratch. But then really thinking about, like, what do I want this house to be for me? Not just a new coat of paint, but what could I really be doing with what I have? And that's really the philosophy that we took, in everything that we're doing at Ringer. We took everything from the research that we do, the activation that we do, how we're building tools, and we tore it down to its base components. What are we ultimately trying to deliver for our clients? What is actually required to do that? Does a human actually need to be part of every bit of that process? If so, where? Where exactly in that process? And part of this for us was, almost taking our ego out of this. I think what really holds a lot of organizations back, and in the past has kind of held us back. A lot of people say, well, okay, that's my task. I'm really good at that thing. I want to spend all my time doing that one thing. But if you really take yourself out of that and take your ego out of that, you may realize, I actually don't need to be spending all my time doing that. There's actually a better task for my brain to be focused on. This is, I may be really good at this thing, but maybe there's an AI solution that can do 90% of that task for me. So from everything from the social analytics that we do, to some of the content recommendations, to, even proposal writing, things like that. We are using AI at every step of every part of our process, and we're often thinking of new ways that we can apply it. Is there a smarter way to doing that thing, even that we just created last week? We're constantly reworking this with very little barriers. There's no, well, this is the way we've already done it. That's it. It's not going to change. We're coming at it from the entire organization with an eye towards, could we tear this process down and rebuild it again faster, more streamlined, integrating AI tools, integrating human oversight where it needs to be, but building the right solutions for what we're trying to deliver for our clients.
This is fascinating. So Yash, how can people who listen to your speech today and want to get in touch with you?
So I can be reached on LinkedIn. You can definitely come to our newly revamped website, ringersciences.com, where we have an AI chatbot there that actually understands a lot of what Ringer is about. We call it Ringy. It's there, but there's a lot of just great information about things that we've worked on. Um, you can also follow me on Twitter, or reach out to me on Twitter, X. Dr. Yash Gad is my handle. But yeah, we would love to talk with anybody that's interested in finding out more about how their organization can kind of start that journey to become AI native. Not just talking about it, not just slapping new paint on or changing countertops, but really fundamentally reworking the way that they do their job through these AI tools and being able to measure that success.
Before we wrap up today's session, anything else would you like to share with the audience?
No, I think the only thing is that, I think this is a really interesting inflection point for all of us. And I think we really have to embrace this future. This is not going to go away. This is not just hype, and this is really a chance for us to rethink how business is done, how businesses are constructed, but we really have to be brave enough to really ask those hard questions of ourselves. So this is something I think is a really exciting series that you're starting off, Helen, because I think every organization is going to have to be thinking this way. So I'm excited for the conversations that you're going to be having in this series.
Thank you. Thank you, Yash.
My pleasure.